Good evening, East Texas. It was a beautiful but breezy weekend. Now it's time to set sights at the start of the upcoming work week, and with that does come the threat of strong to severe thunderstorms. First alert weather days remaining in effect for Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday for 3 potential rounds of these strong to severe thunderstorms. While we do have the threat for each day, that does not mean that everyone will see these threats each and every day. Let's kind of break it down here day by day. Starting with Monday, of course, you'll see northern and westernmost zones here in East Texas included in that slight level 2 to 5 risk for isolated strong to severe storms. Monday is a pretty conditional setup. We'll have lots of puzzle pieces there all at the same time, but are they going to come together? We'll have the moisture, the instability, the lift up in the higher atmosphere, but we need that trigger down at the surface, and we just might get that, but mainly only around 3 to 5 p.m. as you'll see here in Futurecast in just a second. But if these storms can actually start to develop, they're going to pop off pretty quickly. They're going to grow tall. They'll bring the threat for us, some large to very large hail. Could even see some that might get up to the size of golf balls, and when those storms will start to die, then they'll start to develop those strong damaging downburst winds. It's going to be in very isolated spots, but they will be quite strong. If these storms are allowed to live long enough, then there will be the potential for an isolated tornado. These will be surface-based, not elevated. But when you kind of look at the grand scheme of things, on average, it takes about 45 minutes for a storm to really kind of breathe and become tornadic and get going into that supercellular form. So we will be watching for that, but the main severe threats for Monday, while in very isolated spots, will be the large to very large hail and those strong damaging winds. So things expected to stay pretty quiet throughout most of the day on Monday, until we get into the late afternoon hours of Monday, so around 3 to 5 p.m. If we can get enough mixing in the lower middles of the atmosphere, then we might get some activity off at the surface, but they will quickly develop, quickly strengthen, and you'll notice just kind of really favoring that area that the SPC has under that slight risk. This will continue throughout the evening hours until around 11 p.m. Once we get to around that point, we'll already have been without the sun for about 2 to 3 hours. Without that daytime heating, all the energy is gone and the storms will quickly fall apart. But if those storms are not allowed to form, if we don't get that trigger down at the surface, we won't see anything likely on Monday. So we get to set sights now on Tuesday. Now all of East Texas is at least in that slight risk, but you'll notice central north and central southern Oklahoma, and included are far northwestern zones included in that enhanced level 3 to 5 risk for significant severe storms. If these storms are allowed to form, which they likely will along a dry line, then we start to kind of really just have to watch for a little bit of everything. Embedded tornadoes within the line of storms, plus the potential for damaging straight line winds, large hail upwards to the size of quarters, maybe $half, plus some heavy rainfall at times. So Tuesday, not much going on, kind of staying mostly cloudy throughout much of the day. Peaks of sunshine in the afternoon. And then we'll finally start to see activity along the dry line, generally along I-35's corridor and just a bit off toward the west. But again, this is likely going to be around that true heat of the day, 3 to 5 p.m. Now these storms will develop and begin to organize, so by the time they cross the Trinity and move into East Texas, they'll already be strong, thus kind of a bit better organized, which is why we'll have the potential for those embedded tornadoes, but kind of more likely the damaging gusty winds and the very heavy rainfall, plus the small toward pocket change, maybe quarter-sized hail. This will continue from around 10 p.m. and if we can see any persisting storms, they just might last until around 1:30 to maybe 2:30 a.m. It's entirely dependent on how long the system wants to stay around in East Texas. If it races off toward the east, then it'll move out of our area a little bit soon. But just to be aware, it's a little bit more broad timing as we'll have that dry line trigger to really keep things going. And then we set sights on the day 4 outlook from the Storm Prediction Center. It's a little bit more general, but it paints a pretty similar picture of what we're seeing on Tuesday. But instead of a dry line, it will be a cold front with another upper level disturbance, and this will be our final round. Now this will start a little earlier than usual, but you'll notice a bigger chunk of East Texas was included in that enhanced risk. Now with that, it'll start late morning, and then as these storms race off toward the east, which you'll see on Futurecast in just a second, they'll likely organize pretty quickly. So the main threat for Wednesday will be the damaging gusty winds, but there will also be, of course, the potential for the embedded tornadoes within that line, plus the large hail and another round of that heavy to very heavy rainfall. And depending on what spots already saw that heavy rainfall on Tuesday, well, we could see more of a flooding issue in more widespread areas. It just depends on where that heavy rainfall tracks. The SPC agency is concerned though, especially those far northeastern zones. If any storms are allowed to form ahead of the line, then they will carry a greater tornado threat as well as that larger hail threat. So we'll really be keeping a close eye on radar as well. So this is our more longer range futurecast. Wednesday is just a little bit too far out to the future. We don't have the higher resolution models to look at, but it still paints a pretty good idea of when to expect these storms. That cold front will develop these storms moving across our far western zones by around the late morning hours, and then start to really kind of pick up in steam and intensity as we get past around the lunchtime hour. They'll quickly move off toward the east, but could persist into especially our eastern and southernmost zones until around 4 to 5 p.m. before racing off in toward Louisiana and the rest of Dixie Alley as we get toward late Wednesday. So I know it's general, but it paints a better picture for at least timing wise. We'll be able to kind of take a closer look at Wednesday as we get a little bit later on into the next couple of days. But that's all we're doing now, is looking to the future, but also taking each day, day by day. Estimated rainfall totals on average looking to range anywhere from 1 to maybe 2.5 inches, but it's all about the localized spots that could see a bit more, which will then lead to the potential for that isolated flash flooding. So I know that was so much information. We're not trying to, just drown you in it, but we do want to make sure you have a general idea of what to expect for each and every day. So all we ask is that you make sure you have your First Alert weather apps downloaded and you look at this map closely. The most important thing you can do is, of course, know your county and your surrounding counties. If you want to save this picture of this map here, just go to KLTV or K2RE.com, go to the Weather tab, and then you'll find that Project Tornado tab. Click that, scroll all the way to the bottom, and it'll be right there for you to save. Just really important information, especially when we start to have to talk about numerous counties under certain warnings, and it gets a little bit noisy. So that way you have that one little extra bit of important information to make these next couple of days a little easier to deal with.